Clean the desks, conference rooms, and executive workspaces. I stared across Derek Vaughn's enormous glass desk, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. You're serious? Completely. He pushed a single sheet of paper toward me. Your operations position has been restructured out. For the next 2 months, this is where we need you. I looked down at the reassignment notice, then back at the man who had been CEO for less than 6 months. I had worked at Halston and Pierce for 20 years. Derek leaned back like the conversation was already finished. If cleaning is beneath you, Jessie, you're free to leave. Through the glass wall behind him, I saw 2 senior managers suddenly become fascinated with their computer screens. That was when I understood. He wasn't offering me another job. He was trying to humiliate me into quitting. But Derek had made one mistake. Put it in writing, I said. His eyebrows lifted. It already is. No, sign it. For the first time, he hesitated. Then he smirked, picked up his pen, and signed. And when he handed that paper back to me, I started laughing. His smile vanished. What exactly is funny? I didn't answer. Not yet. That Monday morning had started like hundreds before it. I had arrived early, checked the operations calendar, answered 2 urgent emails, and prepared for another week solving problems most executives never knew existed. For 20 years, that had been my job. I had trained employees who eventually became managers. I had stayed late during mergers, reorganizations, system failures, and layoffs. When departments lost staff, their unfinished work somehow landed on my desk. And in 20 years, I had never received a disciplinary warning. Then Derek arrived. He talked constantly about efficiency, modernization, and eliminating legacy costs. Apparently, I had become one of them. So let me understand this, I said, holding his signed notice. My administrative position no longer exists. Correct. And instead of terminating me, you want me cleaning office desks. For 2 months. The cleaning contractor already handles that. They're understaffed. And you decided I should make myself useful. His jaw tightened. Jessie, you're making this unnecessarily difficult. No, I'm making sure I understand. Derek pointed toward the door. You have 2 choices, accept the assignment or leave. I looked through the glass again. One of the managers, watching us, quickly turned away. 20 years of work, and Derek wanted my coworkers to watch me walk out carrying a cardboard box because I refused to become the office maid. I lowered my eyes to his signature. Then I laughed again. Derek leaned forward. You think I'm joking? I slipped the signed notice carefully into my handbag. No, Derek, I said. That's exactly why this is funny. Because underneath that notice was a thick folder I had brought to work that morning. And Derek had just given me the one thing I needed to use it. So why would a woman who had just been humiliated after 20 years suddenly look happier than the CEO who humiliated her? I walked out of Derek's office with his signed reassignment notice, tucked safely inside my handbag. I had barely reached the records room when Monica hurried after me. Jessie. She caught my arm and lowered her voice. Tell me what happened. I glanced toward the hallway before answering. He eliminated my position. Her face dropped. What? And apparently I'm cleaning desks now. Monica stared at me. You're joking. I wish I were. She pulled me farther into the records room and closed the door. Don't quit. The speed of her response caught my attention. I wasn't planning to. No, Jessie, listen to me. Something strange is happening. Monica told me 3 longtime employees had left during the previous 2 months. One had suddenly been moved to an inconvenient schedule. Another had lost most of his responsibilities. A third had been transferred into a role so far beneath her experience that she resigned within weeks. All 3 had been among the company's longer-serving, better-paid employees. That was when the pattern I had suspected finally became impossible to ignore. Derek wasn't simply modernizing Halston and Pierce. He was making certain people uncomfortable enough to leave on their own. And I knew exactly when I had entered his sights. Months earlier, I had learned that Derek requested my complete salary history from HR. Later, I overheard him asking why someone in my position had accumulated so many long-service benefits. Then, my responsibilities began disappearing. First vendor approvals, then executive scheduling, then operational reporting. 20 years of responsibility had been quietly stripped away piece by piece. Monica shook her head. He wants you to resign. I know. Then why were you laughing in there? Instead of answering, I opened my handbag. Beneath Derek's freshly signed notice sat the thick folder I had brought with me. Months earlier, when his questions started, I had retrieved my original employment documents from storage. Then I had taken them to someone outside the company. Someone who understood exactly what those old documents meant. Monica stared at the folder. What did you find? I was about to answer when the records room door opened. Derek stood there. His eyes dropped immediately to my open handbag. Then to the folder. Jessie. I slowly closed the bag. Derek stepped aside and pointed down the hallway. Bring that folder and come back to my office. Derek didn't take me back to his office. Instead, he led me straight into the afternoon staff meeting. Nearly 20 people were already seated around the conference table. Department heads lined one side. HR Director Elaine Morris sat near the far end. Derek took his place at the head. I kept my handbag beside my chair. The folder stayed inside. Before we continue, Derek announced, there's an organizational change everyone needs to understand. I knew immediately what he was doing. My restructuring plan requires flexibility. No position exists simply because it existed yesterday. Then he looked directly at me. Jessie's previous operations position has been eliminated. For the next 2 months, she'll assist with cleaning desks, conference rooms, and executive workspaces. Silence. One manager dropped his eyes. Another employee shifted uncomfortably. Derek continued. This should remind everyone that nobody here is too important to adapt. There it was. He didn't just want me gone. He wanted an audience while he pushed me out. Jessie, he said, do you understand your new responsibilities? Yes, but I want to confirm something. Derek frowned. What? My previous position has officially been eliminated. Yes. Elaine looked up sharply. I continued. And this reassignment isn't because of poor performance. No. Misconduct. No. Any disciplinary issue. Derek's irritation became obvious. No, Jessie. And you personally approved the reassignment. Yes, I signed it myself. Why are we wasting everyone's time? I looked toward Elaine. The color had drained from her face. Derek, she said carefully, could we speak privately? After the meeting. I think we should speak now. Derek's voice hardened. Elaine, after the meeting. That told me everything I needed to know. HR knew something he didn't. Derek turned toward me. And stop treating this like an interrogation. I'm not. I removed his signed notice, folded it once, and slipped it into the thick folder. I just wanted everyone to hear the same answer. Derek stared at me. The room had changed. Minutes earlier, I had been the employee publicly demoted to cleaning desks. Now people were looking at him. I stood. Elaine whispered, Jessie. But I was already moving. I walked slowly to the head of the conference table. Then I placed the folder directly in front of Derek. Derek stared at the folder like I had placed a challenge in front of him. What is this? Open it. A few people around the conference table exchanged glances. Derek pulled the folder toward himself. If this is your resignation. It is. That stopped him. He opened the cover. The first document was my original employment record from 20 years earlier. Behind it were performance evaluations spanning 2 decades. Satisfactory. Exceeds expectations. Exceptional. Year after year. No disciplinary notices. No documented misconduct. Then came the reassignment order Derek had signed that morning. He glanced at the pages and scoffed. Jessie, none of this changes my decision. I know. I pointed toward the folder. Turn to page 7. Elaine pushed her chair back. Derek, I really think we need to stop this meeting. But Derek's pride wouldn't let him. He turned the page and went silent. I watched his eyes move across the document. Recognize the signature at the bottom? I asked. He looked closer. Thomas Halston. Our founder. Derek said nothing. 20 years earlier, Thomas had personally recruited a small group of employees during one of the company's most difficult expansion periods. I was one of them. Derek looked at the heading again. Long Service Retention Agreement. His confidence finally cracked. His eyes moved from the document to the reassignment notice he had signed. Then to Elaine. Why wasn't I told about this? Elaine's expression hardened. You were. Derek blinked. The legacy employee obligations were included in your executive transition files. I never saw this. You approved the restructuring before completing the review. The room became completely still. Now Derek understood why I had demanded his signature. Why I had made him confirm publicly that my position was eliminated. Why I had asked whether misconduct or poor performance had anything to do with it. And most importantly, why I had never said I was resigning. His attempt to force me out had created a written trail instead. Derek flipped through the remaining pages faster. Then he reached the final document. He stopped. Across the top was the letterhead of an employment law firm. His face tightened as he began reading. I sat back down. The smile I had carried since his office disappeared. Keep going, I said. Derek looked up at me. I held his gaze. Now read what your signature cost the company. Derek read the attorney's letter twice. The second time, much more slowly. 20 years earlier, Halston and Pierce had been expanding faster than it could safely manage. Thomas Halston couldn't afford to lose experienced employees during that period, so a small group of us had been offered long service retention agreements. Mine had now reached its 20th year. The agreement didn't make me impossible to fire. If I committed serious misconduct, or the company had legitimate, documented cause to terminate me, it could do so. But that was what Derek had done. He had eliminated my established position. He had materially downgraded me to cleaning offices. And minutes earlier, in front of witnesses, he had confirmed that neither poor performance nor misconduct was involved. The protections in my agreement were therefore triggered. A substantial severance payment. My vested, deferred profit-sharing compensation. Continuation of specified benefits. Payment for accumulated contractual leave. And reasonable legal expenses necessary to enforce the agreement. Derek lowered the letter. We can forget the reassignment. Nobody spoke. He pushed the folder toward me. You keep your old position. Problem solved. I didn't touch it. No. His eyes narrowed. What do you mean, no? This stopped being about whether I accepted your offer when you eliminated my position and signed the reassignment. I can withdraw it. You can speak to my attorney about what happens next. Derek looked toward Elaine. Tell her. Elaine didn't move. Tell her this can be reversed. Elaine closed the notebook in front of her. The board needs to be notified. Derek stared at her. Elaine. Immediately. For the first time that day, Derek had nothing to say. The same employees who had watched him announce that I would be cleaning their desks were now watching him reach for his phone. Nobody laughed. Neither did I. I simply returned to my chair. The review began within days. The board examined Derek's restructuring decisions, HR correspondence, and the treatment of other long-serving employees. They found several questionable attempts to pressure experienced workers into leaving through reduced responsibilities, schedule changes, and unfavorable transfers. My situation was different for one important reason. I had the contract, and Derek had supplied the documentation. Rather than fight a prolonged contractual dispute, Halston and Pierce reached a settlement honoring the compensation and benefits promised under my long-service agreement. My employment record also stated clearly that I left in good standing after my position was eliminated. That mattered to me almost as much as the money. I would not allow 20 years of good work to end with a record suggesting I had failed, refused legitimate duties, or stormed out because I believed certain work was beneath me. Meanwhile, Derek's authority began disappearing. First, the board removed his ability to make major restructuring decisions without approval. Then investigators determined that he had ignored HR warnings, failed to properly review the legacy employee obligations, and exposed the company to unnecessary financial and reputational risk. He was removed as CEO. The man who had told me, "If you don't like it, you can leave," was eventually the one leaving the executive floor. I never returned to my old position. I didn't want it anymore. After the settlement, I took several months away from corporate life. For the first time since my 20s, my mornings belonged to me. Eventually, I began doing part-time operations consulting. The difference was almost funny. Companies were now paying specifically for the experience Derek had treated like an expensive inconvenience. Monica and I stayed in contact, and Halston and Pierce changed its internal policies. Major involuntary role changes involving long-serving employees now required additional review and board-level approval. Derek had wanted to make an example out of me. In a way, he did. Just not the example he intended. For 20 years, I believed loyalty meant working harder, complaining less, and trusting that good work would eventually protect me. I learned something better. Loyalty does not require surrendering your dignity. That morning, Derek thought he had given me two choices: clean desks or walk away with nothing. But when he signed that reassignment notice, he created a third choice without realizing it. That was why I laughed. Derek thought 20 years of service had left me powerless, when those 20 years were exactly what made the folder in my bag worth more than his threat.